Good morning, everybody. My name's Henry. I'm here from the Kent Invicta Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to Business Bites. I'm delighted to be joined by one of our patron members today. We have MHA with us today. We've got Sue, who's the one of the VAT partners. Sue's going to be delivering an incredibly important presentation for you today on the future of business finance. I don't want to spoil too much because I know Sue's going to go through it in much better detail than I will, but just a couple of bits of housekeeping. Can you make sure that you try and stay on mute throughout the session? We will have a time for a Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions throughout, just chuck those into the meeting chat and we'll get to those at the end of the session. And other than that, I'm now going to pass you over to Sue. Sue, over to you.
Thanks, Henry, and hello, everybody. So I'm talking about this today because I don't think there's been enough attention being put to this by businesses, and it is huge, absolutely huge. It will change every business in the UK. So I'm hoping that me telling you this will help you get ready and identify what you need to do in order to be ready. So let's crack on. There we are. UK invoicing is coming, be ready. So the UK government has confirmed that it will be mandatory for all B2B, business to business, and B2G, business to government transactions to be electronically invoiced from 1 April 2029. There are no exceptions. If you're registered for VAT, if you're making B2B supplies or B2G supplies, you have to issue invoices electronically from 1 April 2029. And also, if you're, for example, a retailer, so you don't issue VAT invoices to your customers, you will still have to be ready because you're going to receive electronic invoices from your suppliers. So you're still going to have to know all about this. You're still going to have to change your accounting system, your software, etc. This is a massive change in the way businesses create and transmit invoices and process invoices. And what I'm saying to you today is you need to start looking at your accounting system, at your processes, and at your relationships with your suppliers and your customers right now. So let's start from the beginning. What is an e-invoice? So a lot of people, they say to me, oh, well, it's all about sending a PDF by email. That's electronic. It's not what we're talking about here. So what we're talking about here is an invoice that is created within your accounting system electronically without someone actually doing it. So no one's sitting there typing in the numbers for what the invoice should be for. It's created within the accounting system electronically, and then it is sent electronically. So there will be no sending it via email, no posting. If anybody still does that, it'll be sent by a secure transmission through this trusted network. And the government has chosen PEPL, which is already set up and is already used for e-invoicing around the world. So every business will have to have a connection with PEPL so that invoices can be sent through that system. The invoice, when you send it to your customer, it will go directly into your customer's accounting system. So you don't send it to Joe Bloggs in accounts anymore. It goes directly into their accounting system. Their accounting system checks that invoice, checks who you are, whether they're expecting this invoice, whether the details of the purchase are correct, or the sales is correct, whether it's got the purchase order that it needs on it, whether your name and address is correct on it. Everything is done automatically. There is no manual intervention at that point. If it's validated, the invoice, then it gets posted automatically. If it's your purchase invoice, it automatically gets posted into your accounting system and it gets paid automatically. If there is a problem, then it'd be flagged up for review. So this is a massive change. So the people that you've currently got working on issuing invoices, they basically won't have a job because they will not be needed going forward, because it will be done electronically, automatically. So why is this such a big thing? And it's a big thing globally as well. You know, there are other countries within Europe, Poland, Portugal, and there are other countries around the world, UAE, for example, who are introducing this system of e-invoicing. So the government, the UK government, is doing it because it will modernise the tax system. They think that it will automate business processes, which it absolutely will, make invoice processing more efficient, fewer mistakes being made, easier tax compliance. So, you know, getting the numbers onto your tax VAT returns will be easier, better cash flow because payments are being made faster. There's no hanging around waiting for payments to be made, no chasing payments. So that's going to be a massive thing. Less administrative burden. And the final thing on this slide, so we're not going to have this straight away, but basically under e-invoicing, the tax administration, so HMRC, would at some point in the future be able to receive all the data that is going through this PEPAL network. So all your invoices would be sent directly to the government at the same time as they're being sent to your customer. Now, this isn't going to happen straight away. The House of Commons said, well, HMRC, we really don't think you know what you're going to do with all of this data, so therefore we don't want you to have it at the moment, which I think is a thumbs up, a really good thing. But it is happening elsewhere, and I think it will come eventually. So that will mean that, you know, the government will automatically be getting updates about what your business is doing, what you're buying, what you're selling, and they think it will help with reducing fraud. What do we know so far then? So, as I said, 1 April 2029 is the date for the start of this, all VAT invoices. So if you're not VAT registered, then you won't be affected by this, and you will not receive purchase invoices electronically, and you will not issue sales invoices electronically. Obviously, as soon as you have to register for VAT, you have to be able to do it. So in a way, every business kind of needs to be ready for this, unless they're sure that they're going to stay below the 90,000 threshold. This new regime will operate across private and public sectors, and it's already operating to a degree within the public sector. So this is like an extension into the private sector. HMRC have a dedicated team who are looking at implementation of this, and I've spoken to the person who's in charge of that team, and I actually think they're doing quite a good job here. You know, I'm the first one to complain when I think HMRC are being slow or lazy, but I think they are actually doing quite a good job. They are looking at all different business sectors, all different VAT systems, all different areas of the VAT law, and they're identifying where there are exceptions to the normal invoicing rules. So, you know, for example, if you're a bulk standard business like mine, for example, an accountancy firm, you know, we raise an invoice, we send it to our client, that will all be done electronically, but there's nothing too special about that. But there are certain circumstances, which I've come on to, where you know, it doesn't quite work like that. So we'll have a look at those. The budget's been announced for the 29th of October this year, and at that budget, HMRC have promised that they will be introducing a roadmap for implementation. Now, what's that's going to look like, I don't exactly know. I'm hoping that it will be, you know, obviously dates along a map showing what information will be released at different times, so that businesses can plan. They can see in advance what information and what requirements they're going to be and when they're going to come out, so that they can start planning for this. So 29th of October, we should know more. Important details are still being developed. So as I'm saying, HMRC are looking at these particular areas, and we will get further rules and guidance coming. So we're hoping for detailed information or advice on what kind of transactions and invoice types will fall within the regime, the technical standards and transmission mechanisms to be used, so that if you use Xero, you can be sure that Xero have implemented the right technical standards and that all your invoices will be raised properly electronically using Xero. Obviously, if you have a bespoke accounting system, you have got a big job on your hands, because you're going to have to get your software developers in order to change your system so that it can cope with this. And that's why we've got almost 3 years to prepare for this, because that kind of time may well be needed. They're looking at how different accounting and VAT systems will connect. So we already have Making Tax Digital, where information is supposed to go directly from your accounting system onto your VAT return without a person being involved in that. Well, e-invoicing will also have to be part of that process as well. So we need to make sure that that can work. Self-billing arrangements. So this is where you raise an invoice on behalf of your customer, which is allowed in certain circumstances. If you know the amounts rather than your customer knowing the amounts, then you raise the invoice on behalf of your customer to you. So we need to know how those are going to be done under e-invoicing. So we're hoping that we'll get that information soon. Also, invoices involving the domestic reverse charges, like the construction sector mainly, where the reverse charge of VAT is applied by the customer, not by the provider. So if you're having construction work done, then the contractor will invoice you without VAT. You pay the VAT on that. How's that going to work under e-invoicing? Because there's no VAT on the invoice to go through into your accounting system. We need that information. Transactions involving imports or exports. So you probably know, when you export goods, you have to send a huge amount of information physically with those goods. So, and the Chamber's involved in this in terms of, export documentation. So how is that going to work? If we're sending invoices electronically, how are we going to have a printed invoice that is going to go with the goods? So we need more information on that. I'm flagging these things. I don't have the answers at the moment, but this is what we need to be on the lookout for. You might say to me, look, I'm only a small business, my turnover's 200,000. Surely there must be a way of it not applying to me in the same way that it applies to the likes of IBM or Airbnb or whatever. No, I'm sorry. There is no way that smaller businesses are in some way exempt from this or to be treated differently. With MTD, Making Tax Digital, we have a way of being able to submit VAT returns on behalf of clients electronically. And we were thinking maybe something similar would apply here, so that someone can do your invoicing for you. No, HMRC have said no, that's not going to happen. They believe that there will be cheaper ways of raising e-invoices, so Xero or QuickBooks, for example. If you only raise a few, then you'll be able to use that, but there's no exception to this. The only time that HMRC will consider granting an exception is the same as how they currently do with VAT returns being submitted digitally, and that is if you are old, if you are of a religion that doesn't use or can't or won't use computers, or if you are in an area of the country where you don't get a signal, then you're allowed to submit a paper VAT return, and we should have the same allowances for e-invoicing. But I mean, they are very few and far between those exceptions. So I think that's exactly the same as what we're going to see for e-invoicing. I hope I'm not scaring you all too much. I've got so used to talking about this, but I know that when you realise the impact on your business, it's like this awful moment, isn't it, of fear as to, my God, this is a massive change. It really is. So it's not just the finance team that are going to be affected by all of this. the project to change your business to be able to cope with e-invoicing is going to include so many other areas of your business, and I've got some of them here. So obviously finance, accounts payable, staff accounts receivable, VAT coding and reconciliations are all going to be affected here because they'll all have to be done electronically. Actual tax amounts, VAT amounts, the VAT treatment, whether an invoice is valid, special schemes, as I mentioned, audit. So if you're currently audited, then your auditors are going to need to be able to see that you are ready for re-invoicing and that you have an audit trail that they can evidence and they can check. IT, obviously, accounting platforms, interfaces, data standards and system security is all going to be part of this. You need to make sure that with all these changes, your system is still secure. Procurement, so how you onboard your suppliers and purchase to pay processes. So all of that is going to need to be checked. Obviously, sales, customer requirements, your customer's name and address. I mean, let's go down to the very lowest level. All my clients, I'm saying to them, look, you've got to cleanse your customer data. You need to make sure you've got the right name and address, that you know if they're VAT registered or not. That means really you need their VAT number, so that you know that whether you have to issue an e-invoice to them or not. So, for example, if you're dealing with, I don't know, doctors, making supplies to lots of doctors, how are they going to be treated? Some of them are in business, some of them aren't, some of them are VAT registered, some of them aren't. You have to go through all of your customer data to determine how you're going to treat them under e-invoicing. Contracts and legal and commercial people are going to need to be involved in this because they're going to need to make sure that all the contracts are in order and that everything is going to run smoothly. And your operations people as well, because there will be a need to manage exceptions that come through and that there's a problem with that are identified, invoices are identified as not being correct in some way. How do you issue credit notes? Who's going to issue the credit note, etc. And disputes on invoices and how they will be dealt with. So it's not just a project for the finance team. It's much, much bigger than that. So what is it that you should be doing now? So in my head, you have got less than 3 years to get ready. HMRC has said that they will hopefully have a period of 12 to 18 months before 1 April 2029 where they're not changing things. I think that's probably quite hopeful. I don't think they'll be ready kind of like 18 months before. That would be September next year, wouldn't it? I don't think they're going to be ready then. So I think you need to be looking at getting ready now. This is my suggestion. First of all, mapping your processes as they are, how sales and purchase invoices are currently created, sent, received and approved, because you will still need approval methods, won't you, for your invoices to make sure they go out correctly. So how do you currently do those things? What manual interventions do you currently have? What spreadsheets do you use? What portals, what interfaces? You'll need to record all non-standard invoice arrangements and VAT treatments, and then you'll need to keep an eye on what the government is saying, what comes out of the budget in terms of this roadmap, what people like me are saying. You can see on my website now, on the MHA website, I did what we call an insight, which is like a Q&A of where we are, and that was about a month ago, so that's pretty much up to date. You can go and have a look at that and get more information there. There'll be more of those coming. Secondly then is kind of an assessment phase, reviewing what your accounting, billing and procure systems are capable of, and at this point are they going to be good enough? Do you have systems that are going to be able to operate under a totally new e-invoicing arrangement? You need to identify your important customers and suppliers because they might influence how you implement e-invoicing. And, let's face it, on that 1 April 29, you want to be able to invoice your biggest customer because you want that money to come in. So, recognize that now. Review data quality, like I was saying, this cleansing process for your customer details, VAT numbers, tax codes, purchase order information, all of that needs to be looked at. And then finally, a planning process so that you can establish who is going to deal with these different areas that you need to change, so that you have a plan in place with dates, with timelines, etc. You need to include e-invoicing now in any systems upgrades and digital transformation projects that you're starting, so that it's part of all of that and doesn't have to be an add-on later in a panic. Maintaining a register of technical and VAT questions requiring clarification. So I have the email of this person at HMRC. So if you have questions, I can ask those questions. So do please let me know. The more info we pass through to HMRC, the more chance there is of having a system that works for you. So, if you have any questions and I can't answer them, I will pass them on to HMRC. And as I said before, monitoring further announcements and HMRC guidance, that's obviously really important. Key message, you probably got all this from what I've been saying, but it may seem a long way away, 2029, but it really isn't. Huge amounts of change to be made. You need to start looking at this now. We know it's going to happen. It may be put back. I don't know, you don't know, but really you've got to work on this 2029 date because the whole world is moving to e-invoicing. So the UK is not going to be the only one that's not doing it. We'll know more on the 29th of October, as I said. You need to understand your invoicing, your systems, all non-standard arrangements that you have in place. Early preparation means that you're in charge of this whole process rather than having it as a last-minute compliance panic. That's what we need to avoid. And my suggestion of questions to start with: how do invoices move through our business today? What changes do we need to make in order to comply? Is our software provider offering e-invoicing capability? Like I said, Xero, you can already prepare e-invoices. But if you've got some different kind of software, or like most of my clients, you've got a bit of this and a bit of that, and your software has pulled together over the years, you've got a job on your hands to make sure that what you've got can manage e-invoicing. And finally, is your customer and supplier data up to date and complete? You can do that now. You don't need to wait 2 years before you start doing that. I would suggest you do that now. And then when you onboard new customers and new suppliers, then you make sure that you're collecting all of the information that you need at that point so that you don't have to go through the whole process again. So some suggestions there from me as to what you need to be doing and how you can get started. I think it's like anything, isn't it, with these big implementation projects? Once you get started and you start thinking about what's going to be impacted, you start making a plan, you're in control, and then things become so much easier. So that's what I'm saying to my clients. Look, get cracking now. Let's look at your systems. Let's determine what's going to need to be changed. Let's have a plan. Let's have a timeline for how you're going to do this and how you're going to achieve it. I hope you found that useful. And I'm going to stop there and see, hopefully, if there are any questions. Henry?
Yes, we do have a few notes, first of all, just throughout. Meredith said that this does sound quite we said this sounds terrible. Sounds quite terrifying. There's a lot of preparation to be getting going, like you've alluded to throughout. Interestingly, we had a couple of points. Firstly, from Emma, and secondly from Travis. Emma mentioned this is going to be a nightmare in the construction sector. Emma, I didn't know if you wanted to unmute and perhaps ask about some of the concerns that you have, or if there was anything that Sue could perhaps clear up for you.
It's just how quickly you think that we might get the self-billing roadmap, because I just can't see how that's going to work with clients. I mean, especially in the construction sector at the moment, some of them are struggling financially. If the money's automatically going to come out of their account as soon as I send an invoice, it's going to be bizarre way to a good way, don't get me wrong, to run a business, especially if they're planning on losing retentions around the same time as well. But I just, because we do the self-billing in such a way, and then we produce our own invoices internally that never get sent to the client, I just can't see how that's going to work. And then you've got different VAT rates for different things applied to different elements of projects. It's going to be very complicated.
It's going to be extremely complicated for the construction sector. I absolutely agree with you, Emma. And I know that HMRC have got self-billing kind of top of their list. When I was talking to them, they joined an ICAW meeting where I was a member. They said that they know the construction sector is going to be really big because there's the reverse charge, the domestic reverse charge, plus self-billing. So they are aware of that. I am expecting to see something in that roadmap that tells us exactly when they're going to be giving the actual technical information for how you're going to self-bill. So I think that it is a watch this space, but I will make sure.
It's also going to be a nightmare for us in terms of, you know, our supply chain is going to invoice us, the money's going to go, but we haven't been paid for it yet. We're going to have no control over that.
Yep. Yeah, no, I agree.
What happens if you haven't got the money in your account to pay it? I mean, that's going to be even worse.
Yeah, now that's a really interesting point because nothing's been said about that yet. I mean, like I said, you know, the payment goes directly and the government thinks, well, this is going to improve things for businesses because payment will be quick. But obviously, if you don't have the money in the account, payment's not going to go. And it's, you know, it's all got to be joined up in any case. So again, we've got to wait for the guidance to come as to how that's going to work.
When do you anticipate that's going to be? Because obviously implementing these changes is going to be huge.
So we'll get the roadmap at the end of October. From what HMRC have said, they will start to release actual useful information straight after that. So I think November, December, January, we should see quite a lot of information coming out of HMRC. This is how you deal with self-billing. This is how you deal with margin schemes or whatever it might be. And, you know, we can push them and tell them that this information is needed. They've had that message, though, I must say, like many times over. But yeah, I think that's what's going to happen. They've promised that they are going to be ready. They've promised, as said, that they will have this period at the end where they don't keep changing things. That means they've got a period of like less than a year to get the actual technical info to us. So it should all come within the period from like November until
do you
November.
think that there are going to be steering groups and stuff that we can, you know, because obviously they don't work in the construction industry, they don't necessarily understand how it works, and I'm assuming that works in the same as import and export. I've never worked in that industry either, but you know, there are anomalies in everything that every business does.
Yeah, no, there are. So they are, well, they're talking to people like the ICAW. They will also be talking to like the construction sector industry bodies about what's required in those sectors. I can find out for you, Emma, exactly who they're talking to about construction. Have you seen anything from any of your industry bodies that they are talking to HMRC?
No, nothing at all. This is quite a surprise to me, to be honest, this morning.
Well, it's just, like I say, I keep talking about it and everyone's like, because people don't know about it. Emma, I'll find out who HMRC are talking to, and then, you know, I'll feed that back to you so that you can get in touch with them and make sure your message goes through.
Lovely, thank you.
I'll do that.
Perfect, Emma, thank you very much. Travis, you raised points on import and export. I don't know if you wanted to unmute. Was it perhaps some similar questions or?
Am I unmuted? All right, yes, that's fine. Yeah, look, I mean, we're a manufacturer and a lot of our raw materials come from China. And I can't see them coming into a system like this anytime soon, certainly with some of the smaller manufacturers we work with, and we export a lot to the EU. I mean, probably about 2/3 of our business is all in the UK, but it's that other third that's outside of that. I mean, there will have to be some kind of process or system that makes, for the vagaries of international shipping as well. I mean, there's no way you can auto pay a supplier when the goods may not have arrived yet because there's been a escalation in the Middle East or something's gone wrong at the Panama Canal. It's there has to be some way. I mean, like Emma was just saying, I'd not heard of this before today, and so it's come as quite a surprise that they would have such, what I would think is a very, very short timeline to have every business-to-business transaction in this system.
Yeah,
I'm just sort of a bit speechless now. Sort of now that I've said that out loud, and I'm perhaps even a little bit more shocked.
It's terrifying. It really is. It's absolutely terrifying that it hasn't had any real visibility. But yeah, for imports and exports, so HMRC say they are aware that they will have to be on it in terms of how imports and exports will work, because you have to have documents with goods when they pass through a border so that they can be checked physically.
No, absolutely.
Checked.
Yeah.
And that's not going to change.
I mean, it is possible. Some countries you can now do electronic documentation, but it's not universal by any means. There's still, and you have a lot of choice when you do your documentation. You might still choose to do paper bill of lading and so on, because that is the title to the goods and you want absolute control over that. You certainly don't want any kind of automatic early release or anything like that. It's still a it's not something you could suddenly say the UK doesn't do this anymore. You would lose an awful lot of trade.
Absolutely. No, of course you would. Okay, I mean, they're telling me it's top of their list. So we should see, with the budget, we should see something coming out of the budget about these big areas that they know they're going to have to look at. But I will feed it through to this HMRC woman again and say, look, this is what I'm hearing. This is the worry. It's got to be sorted out, and see what she says. And we'll be doing. Henry, we'll have to do an update, won't we? Because this is like huge. So
that's where my mind was going. Yeah.
yeah. And after the budget, when we know more, we can do an update. Then we can fill you in on what's come out and what's still to come. But yeah, I think the important thing is to do that assessment process now, so because in your business, Travis, it won't just be the import export that you've got the issue with. There'll be other issues as well. So you need to identify all of those, so that you then know what you're looking for and what's going to come out in the new legislation and new guidance, so that you're on top of it. And that can be done, and I think should be done now before the budget, so that you're ready for that info.
Perfect. Sue, thank you very much. Travis, thank you very much for your question. We do have quite a few more questions. I am aware that we are slightly running over. So if you do have to get onto anything else, please don't feel obliged to hang around. You're more than welcome to drop out if you need to. But Sue, if you're happy to, we can crack on with a few more questions.
I'm happy to carry on, yeah.
We've been inundated, which doesn't normally happen. This has made my life nice and easy. So Niaz, I'm not sure if you're still here, but you had a couple of points. I know you did say that you needed to drop out. So I think you may be already gone, but it was about the presentation being shared. Obviously, we have recorded the presentation, so the whole thing will be shared with you all afterwards anyway. I think that addressed a question a bit later on as well. We've got Sam and Carleen from Sideways. Would you like to unmute and ask away? I know you had a few points you wanted to quickly run through. We'll do a quick fire one for this one, shall we?
Oh yeah, sorry. I was just making a general consensus of going, oh my God, how many more? We've got more questions than we've got answers, haven't we, at the moment? I just jotted a few down, mainly for my own benefit of reminding myself of things to look for. But one of the things that we were just discussing about amongst ourselves was, you know, we're VAT registered, but numerous of our clients aren't. So what happens then, and at what stage does that cause a bottleneck in the e-invoicing system? Because if we have to issue an e-invoice, but they don't have the system their end to receive it, what happens with that?
So you won't issue, sorry to interrupt you, but you won't issue an e-invoice to someone who's not VAT registered. You will issue a normal invoice. So, I mean, that makes it more complicated, doesn't it? Because you'll have a normal invoicing system and an e-invoicing system. But yeah, anyone who's not VAT registered will not be required to conform to these new rules.
Yes, I mean, so obviously we have a varied client base, which I'm sure echoes. We're not in construction, we're in publishing and media, but it's the same thing. We have such a mix of clients, and the same thing when using an e-invoicing system. If you don't have a product that is sold at the same amount, you know, if you sell a cup and that cup is a tenner, great. But if you're selling different levels of service or product that every single client is invoiced at a completely different amount, the CRM systems, or the way in which where it's gaining that data from, is going to be an absolute minefield.
It is, and you need to start with reviewing that, don't you, and identifying, right, this is where our problem area is going to be. And it is an awful situation where you, like you said, you're going to sit there with your colleagues. Oh my God, we're going to have to look at this. We're going to have to look at that. But write it all down, get it all down, so that you know exactly what you've got to do. Yeah.
And then again, one of my questions, which I think was then echoed by Judy later on, where we were talking about, you know, even if you're issuing an e-system invoice to another VAT registered company, and then you're talking about automatic payments, well, who's managing the cash flow of that? Someone else, you know, recognize that not every client is cash flow happy, and particularly in the current economic circumstances, people are, you know, waiting for one payment to come in before one payment can come out. So it's who is it that's controlling things like payment terms? Because you might issue an invoice on your own payment terms, but different supplier chains have different payment terms, don't they?
They do. No, they absolutely do. So there will have to be some control over when payments are made, won't there? It can't be absolutely 100% automatic. You know, oh, the invoice comes in, tick, 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 it's got this, it's got that, fine, through it goes straight out of your bank account. You'll have to be able to control. There must be limits where you say, you know, this invoice can be paid if there's so much in the bank or whatever, so that you have control over it. And we don't know that yet.
No, but thank you very much. As everyone else has kind of echoed, this has been the first bit of information that we've been able to listen to and get scared by. So thank you.
I don't like scaring people, really.
Scared awareness rather than you being scary. Thank you, Sue.
My pleasure.
Brilliant. Judy, you were next in the queue. I know you had a couple of questions. Would you like to unmute and ask away? Don't know. Maybe Judy's had to drop out as well. In which case, I'll very, very quickly run through these with you, Sue. Judy asked, just because invoicing is electronic, does that necessarily mean that payment of invoice will be automated? Won't firms retain control of their own cash flow, which we've obviously already kind of touched upon? And then this is one that actually came into my mind as well, not knowing that Italy had already implemented this, but are there any lessons from countries where this has already been implemented, like Italy?
Well, it's interesting you say that. HMRC have said that they are talking to other countries to find these lessons and learn from them. I mean, I'd be surprised, to be honest, if they have, because they don't normally do that. But let's hope so, because it is now operating in a lot of countries, and it would be good to get those countries to say, yeah, we should have done this, or we should have done that, or this worked well. I mean, at the moment, all I can say is I'm hopeful that they are doing that.
Perfect. Melanie, I'm going to speak on your behalf here, as this was more of a point of interest rather than a question, but Melanie put that they'd been advised that a French customer is going to be e-billing and naively thought it was an email PDF, which I think is a mistake that most people would make, to be completely honest with you. She's going to go through the notification and was just saying how useful this has been. And again, I think it was the same case, that this might be the first information that people have got. And Ian alluded to that as well, with it being the first matter of news as well. went back through. Judy mentioned about Xero, already has e-invoicing information, so perhaps we can have a look at what Xero have been doing and
Yep.
learn from that.
Yep.
Just going to
Definitely.
keep going through. Emma, yes, the presentation will be sent out. Don't worry too much about that. Lots of thinking to do. And then, yeah, final point from Meredith was about this being the first time she'd heard about it as well. So, yeah, I think Sue mentioned this earlier, and this is something that is really impactful, and we'll definitely touch base afterwards and look at a date post-budget so we can kind of go through what's been said, how this will impact you. Obviously, having all attended today, you'll be sent an invite to that one for sure, because it's important, it's happening. We can't stop it. We haven't got that much time realistically to prepare. But yeah, that does bring us nicely to the end of the session. Thank you for all of you who did hang on and joined in what was an incredibly engaging Q&A at the end there, which was fantastic to see. Obviously, huge thank you to Sue for the presentation. Sue's details have been on the screen throughout the Q&A session. So if you did want to get in contact with her, please do. If you do miss out on seeing those, do just drop us at the Chamber a note and we're happy to put you in touch as well. I've been Henry from the Kent and Victor Chamber of Commerce. Thank you all ever so much for attending, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. It sounds like you're going to be very busy.
Yes. Bye, everyone.